Welcome back to Worth Weekly News. This week we had a Q&A that led to some exciting news that you probably know what it is from the title of this video, so hit that subscribe button. But first, let's get through that Q&A before we get to that news in particular. So it's split up into multiple parts for tanks, aircraft, and navy, and other. Starting with tanks, the first question was asking if they plan to add upgrade packages for various tanks like the M1A1HA and the Megatron modification, and if those are going to be modules that you research or individual vehicles. And they said that if they do add them, it'll probably be a modification for the M1A1HA, but the Megatron will be its own individual vehicle, probably because there's not a whole lot of Challenger 2s left to add to the tree. However, although they did create a loophole in the question with the if they are added, it does still sound like these are definitely planned, which is good news. The next question was a pretty simple one, asking if Japan and Italy are going to get some SAMs, and the answer was, of course, yes, of course they're going to get SAMs. But the question, though, is what exactly SAMs will they get? Because the ones that we have been getting with the optical guided missiles, I don't think Japan had any of those, and I don't know about Italian armaments, but I'm very interested to see what those could be. Next question was something I was pretty excited for. Unfortunately, the answer was disappointing, and asking if we're going to see change of a vehicle's construction, essentially adding on things like floats for the Kima, or maybe bulldozers for the various tanks that had them. However, the answer was maybe, but not in any near plans. I hate to criticize someone's grammar because mine isn't exactly the best, but maybe and maybe are two different words. Well, one's two words, and they have separate meanings, whereas maybe is perhaps. Maybe more means that it could be in this state. It may be Monday. You can't just put maybe as a singular sentence, but whatever. They're Russian, sometimes the typos happen. Next up was the aircraft questions, and they were asking if there's going to be anything added to stand up to the T2, and the answer was that they're planned. Well, of course they're planned. We even know there was the leak of those models, which included the F8, which definitely could deal with a T2. As for other nations that didn't have the F8s, like the UK, they could get the Jaguar. I'm not sure what Germany would get, or Italy, and Russia probably had a million things. They have so many jets. Next question was asking if there's going to be any more Hawker Hunters, and they pretty much said no. Then they were asked if they're going to be updating more older aircraft models, and they kind of got a no. Oh, they have no plans, although we might see some in the future. Next section was for helicopter questions, and they were all trash. Yes, they're going to be continue developing helicopter enduring conversation. They're going to be continue developing the entire games. That's kind of implied. Yes, they're going to add helicopters for Italy and Japan. Yes, they're going to add helicopters for Britain. That's all obviously planned. And they didn't give any solid answers for any of these either, so you're not missing anything by skipping this. Next session was for naval, and it was kind of disappointing. Got some pretty bad answers. First question was asking if the grind is going to be not trash anymore, and the answer was that it's a feature, not a bug. However, laser designators on aircraft, that's a bug. And the Gaijin's excuse on why certain boats, especially some at low tiers, have insanely high research costs is because the way they wanted to develop the tree, and kind of threw the idea out, but are also kind of sticking with it, is that you would grind through the tree to the level of ship that you want, say destroyers, and then you would research the destroyer line until you got to the top of that tier. And the same goes with gunboats and the low tier stuff. That's why you see tier 2 things with 200,000 research cost, as those are supposed to be like top tier in their own division. Originally, I was more okay with this because they would let you just easily and quickly get down to the level of ship that you wanted. I wanted to get to destroyers as soon as possible, so you could skip most of the tree and just get straight to destroyers. However, a little bit after release, they decided not anymore. You have to research quite a bit of the boats to get to the destroyers. And an issue that Gaijin isn't taking into account is that the number of boats in these tech trees isn't that much. So as you're trying to, let's say you want the Type 143, you're gonna have to be playing the few ships in front of that line for a long time to be able to grind through that. And taking out the same boat over and over again, doing the same things, it gets really grating, and it makes the grind feel a whole lot worse than it actually is, even though it is also really bad. So yeah, they're making something that is really bad feel even worse. Bravo, Gaijin, bravo. There are two pretty simple solutions to this, and one would actually be much cheaper on Gaijin. Reduce the research costs. People would get through the tree first, and maybe they'll get bored after they research the whole tree, but as you add more new stuff, they'll go back to it. And having the top tier stuff, they'll feel special and cool and having this nice boat. The other solution, which requires a lot of green, is to add more vessels to the trees. So there is a more upkeep of changing of the vessels as people grind through it, so it doesn't feel nearly as terrible. Although it seems as Gaijin has opted for the third option, do nothing. Curious to see how that works out. Next question was asking if there's going to be any new game modes, and they essentially got soon. After that, someone asked if we're going to see monitor class ships, and they said maybe, although this was answered a very cheeky way. The person ended their question with saying this year or basically wait for them in game. And the reply was basically you can wait for it with a happy face. Maybe they're implying that it's sooner than soon. Maybe they're saying it's not this year, as that was the alternative provided answer. There's a few other naval questions that I didn't answer because they got kind of bad answers. The final section was labeled other and contained questions that they probably could have put elsewhere. The first question was asking if the lesser used trees like France, Italy, and Japan were going to have the gaps and various areas filled. And the answer was a kind of a stock, we plan to add as much things, but we won't make up paper tanks. Essentially, it's a no, we're not going to bother at all. The next question is concerned with the issue of bringing captured vehicles into simulator battles. It states things like the German Yak-1 and LA-5FN. However, I feel that there's more issues there, like the T3, which is a Russian captured Panzer III, which you can literally just put the winter camo on and it looks almost exactly like a German Panzer III with the winter camo on. Gaijin says that they try to put as few of these vehicles in as possible, which is a complete lie. They don't try at all with simulator battles. In fact, it's hard to put them as simulator because the only part that is any form of simulation is having to use a joystick to fly the planes. You know the R3T20 is allowed in simulator battles against Second World War tanks. Very simulator right there. You got time-traveling pizza vans. The final question is the one that everyone's getting riled up about. So I'll just read it verbatim. It says, Sweden had a lot of interesting vehicles, especially ground vehicles. Should we wait for this nation to be added to the game? And the answer is, we see Sweden as one of the candidates to be added as a new game nation. This is some pretty big news. However, it's also just on some random Q&A, so I wouldn't say it definitely leads to anything, although it is very possible maybe Sweden is what we're going to see at Gamescom this year for War Thunder. Although I still have a feeling that we will see some sort of raid or guided ordinance. But hey, maybe Sweden is going to be the main thing instead. So I decided to look over exactly what kind of vehicles could we expect from the Swedish tech tree. And as every nation has, starting with the air tree, they have some pretty interesting planes here and there. However, the most of them look like your generic European stuff with a good amount of copy-paste. Although you're going to see copy-paste in any new tree edge in the game at this point, because that's unfortunately kind of the way history went. It was cheaper to buy aircraft from the US or Russia instead of developing your own. However, one of the Swedish aircraft that really stands out to me is a push prop. It's called the Saab J21. It had many variants, 2 attackers armed with 450 cals and a 20 mil. Doesn't look much like a turn fighter, but I think it could be a pretty fun aircraft. I really love push props, so I'll be looking forward to it. Hey, and there's even jet variant of it, so it's like the J7W's dream come true. Besides that, there were some pretty big gaps in multiple spots in the tree, although that's kind of to be expected. The Swedish Air Force never had to rise to any other nation opposing it, so they kind of just had their aircraft and then decided to buy some better ones when jets started coming around. In the terms for tanks, it's kind of the same story. A lot of big gaps, a lot of copy-paste, although much more of their own designs and much more unique in many ways. Their tank destroyers look absolutely awful. Sorry, they just do. However, the Strav 103E tanks look very interesting, but may have some weak points. The main quality of this tank is that it is flat on top. Well, it's not entirely flat. I think it's like 78 degrees. But if you notice in game, 78 degrees on just about any sheet of metal will bounce just about everything. The top is, from what I heard, 40 millimeters. And if you want to test if certain in-game rounds will penetrate that, you can actually do it right now by angling a Tiger II 105. Its turret roof is 40 millimeters. I did a bunch of testing on it. It bounces just about everything, except for ATGMs. So sounds great, right? Nice flat tank, stronger L7. Bit of a small problem is they had this idea to put these ribs on it that are about 40 millimeters thick and 30 millimeters tall. I'm not sure how this worked out in real life, but in game it may give stuff like HESH and HeatFS something to detonate on, making the whole angle bit entirely pointless. However, though, later variants of the tank did attempt to minimize chemical rounds. Some other issues I could see with the tank are that it's only 40 millimeters on the top, so someone with some nice high penetrating guns like the Germans or Russians could probably penetrate that if they got a good angle, and I'm pretty sure heat rockets might just completely destroy the tank, as the sides aren't very thick either. I don't know how much, but not much. However though, regular ballistic and kinetic rounds, it's almost completely immune to it on the top. That 78-degree angle really does the trick. As for the Swedish Navy, it's alright. Their destroyers seem to never have more than 4 120mm cannons, which seems lacking when compared to many of the Japanese and American ones, which boast 6 of them, and even some of the British. However, the Russian ones do also get by with a similar amount of cannons for most of their vessels. They only had light cruisers, no heavy cruisers, and their light cruisers actually seem pretty much on par with the current light cruisers that we see most other trees have. They don't stand a chance towards the Brooklyn, but nothing in the game stands a chance to the Brooklyn. And if we ever do get them, the battleships for Sweden, they were unfortunately only ever coastal defense battleships, which seem to be more on par with the Deutschland class heavy cruiser for Germany. But besides the battleships, overall the Navy seems pretty alright. I didn't look over the boats, but I also don't really care for boats much. Personally, I would have rather had a nation that actually took part in any of the wars that the game is advertised to be about. Sweden was neutral during the First World War, basically neutral during the Second World War, only supplied medical aid during Korean War, supplied medical aid during Vietnam War, and it seemed assisted in peacekeeping missions in some ways I was too lazy to go research about for various conflicts in Africa and the Middle East. The last time Sweden actually went to war in the traditional sense with somebody was 1814, when they invaded Norway, and just about all of their tanks, the ones that they've made, have seen no combat. I find this a bit funny because there's quite a few people in the forums who get upset about prototypes that never saw combat being added to the game, but now we're getting a whole nation that never saw combat added to the game. And knowing that during the Second World War they assisted the Germans just as much as they assisted the Allies in various ways, and during the Vietnam War they actually supplied medical aid to the Viet Cong, I really wonder what side they're going to be put on in the simulator battles. Interesting stuff to speculate on what's coming to the future, but that's not all. Very mysterious. Helicopter CE now says that it goes from 8.0 to 11.3 battle ratings, which is very strange. We currently only have 10.0 as the top battle rating. But also on that, for a while now actually, when you made a custom battle, the highest battle rating you could mark it as, and this is still a thing, is 10.7, which we don't have any of those either. But this is a drastic difference from 10.7, and 11.3 is a very bizarre one to choose. Hopefully it means that we can expect some extended battle ratings in the future, because currently the game kind of needs that. However, this is all pure speculation. Something a bit more down to earth is that the Type 74 is going to be getting new engine sounds, as posted on the War Thunder Japan Twitter accounts. Besides that, some people have been data mining, and they haven't found anything too impressive. Some slight changes to the Focke-Wulf's P-43 152mm Type 41 cannons, AMX-30 Super, and PvE at top tiers got a little harder. Some more exciting things happened in the changelog. For the most part, it was your typical minor bug changes. For example, the AMX M4 had its armor fixed. The big one is that they are now claiming, again, that they have fixed the aircraft assist tag system. Now, I'd read through it and explain it all and all that, but last time they did this, it didn't work. Or, I don't know, maybe they just lied a bunch. So my plan is to test it out a bunch and then get back to you on next week's War Thunder Weekly News video. And the final announcement of the night is that a member of my Discord, TinyGerman26, is hosting a skin competition on the warthunder.live page. I'll leave a link to the rules and all that down below. The interesting part, the prizes, the first place gets any premium vehicle of their choice, second gets 5,000 Golden Eagles, and third place gets 2,500 Golden Eagles. All you simply have to do is, when posting a skin of any vehicle, ideally from a rank 4 and lower, tag it with Tiny Skin Comp. Of course, no profanity, and no symbols banned from War Thunder. The contest ends on July 31st, so you have plenty of time to create a nice skin, and you can submit as many as you wish and resubmit skins if need be. I'm curious to see what you guys come up with. Once again, the links for that will be in the description below and probably pinned in the top comment. And that's just about all the news this week. If you liked the video, hit the like button. If you like the video, don't hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. If you'd like to support the channel, you can hit the join button and receive early uploads. I make War Thunder Weekly news videos on the weekends. I make reviews throughout the week. I like to stream on Saturdays. I'm going to try to start streaming on Twitch a bit more often so that that bell icon to be notified anytime I upload thing. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day. As bonus news, there may have been another leak, this time for a however story for another video. Hope soon.